For 20 years, Janice Dean warned people about storms, hurricanes, blizzards, tornadoes, the kind of things you can spot on radar, track for days, and get ready for. She's not just good at it, she's great. But the worst storm she ever faced? That one didn't make it onto any maps. No satellite caught it forming. No alert popped up to warn her. It crept into her body quietly. No fanfare, no warning at all. And it hit during a year when her career was supposed to be taking off, her biggest moment yet. When her diagnosis finally came, she sat across from a doctor and learned what had been happening inside her nervous system. But the first advice she got wasn't about medications or coping strategies. It was simple, blunt, and hurtful. Keep it to yourself. Nobody wants to see a sick person on TV. She was 35, scared, overwhelmed, and someone actually told her her main job now was to make sure the audience stayed comfortable. Forget what was happening to her, just keep smiling. But Janice didn't listen. She found a way to carry all of that in private and kept showing up every day, just like always. And then life threw her another disaster, this time on a national scale. A governor's political order, a nursing home tragedy, 2 funerals in the same spring. Her husband lost both of his parents, just 2 weeks apart, in a pandemic Janice believes, with the paperwork to back it up, could have been stopped. When she tried to speak out, to testify before lawmakers, they kicked her off the list. Too uncomfortable for people in power. The weather girl, they called her. Like grief comes with a resume. Like you need credentials to feel loss. They underestimated her. In 2025, after 20 years of standing in front of that green screen, through flare-ups, infusions, and heartbreak her viewers never really saw, the storm inside her hit harder than ever. It forced her off the air, sent her searching for something deeper in Rome, and finally brought her to say what she'd quietly lived for years. The battle was getting tougher. Every single day. Janice Dean, at 55, has survived a disease with no cure, buried her in-laws in a pandemic she helped bring to light, raised 2 boys while carrying a secret she was told to keep, and stood on national TV with such warmth that nobody ever imagined what she was really up against. This isn't a weather report, it's a story about a woman who became the storm. So, let's go back to the beginning. Janice was born in 1970 in Ottawa, Canada. Cold winters, quiet ambition, and a childhood that taught resilience without ever making a fuss. From early on, she was drawn to 2 things, the sky and the microphone. Surviving Canadian winters makes you pay attention to the weather. But for Janice, her voice was her superpower. Genuine, warm, impossible to ignore. Broadcasting was a natural fit. She started at tiny stations, odd-hour time slots, the kind of places where success comes one stubborn hour at a time. Not all at once. She didn't inherit any of it. She built it. Through the hard work no one talks about by the time you're famous. Then, in 2004, Fox News offered her a job. For a Canadian who'd cut her teeth in regional media, this was more than a new gig. It changed everything. She stepped onto a massive stage, Fox and Friends, a show millions tune into before their first sip of coffee. Her colleagues noticed what fans would quickly love. She didn't play a part. She actually cared about weather. She made people care, too. That mix of confidence and openness is hard to master, but Janice had it. Viewers called her the Weather Machine, and soon, the Weather Queen. In 2007, she married Sean Newman, a New York City firefighter. They had 2 sons, Matthew and Theodore, raising them in a house where one parent heads for fires, the other for cameras. Both built to help people and tell the truth, whatever's coming. On the surface, everything looked solid by the late 2000s. The job, the family, the catchphrase, the loyal morning audience. But underneath, something else had started. In 2005, just a year into Fox News, the symptoms snuck in. Bone-deep fatigue, strange numbness in her thighs, the bottoms of her feet, not quite there anymore. That year's hurricane season was brutal. Dennis, Emily, Katrina, Rita, Wilma, one after another. She blamed the hours, the pressure. Surely that's all it was. But when the last storm faded and things calmed down, the numbness didn't. So she saw a neurologist, went through the tests, and the result came back. multiple sclerosis. If you don't know much about MS, here's the thing. It's an autoimmune disease where your own body starts attacking the nerves that connect your brain to everything else. It scrambles signals, so you get heavy fatigue, numbness, blurry vision, trouble balancing, and sometimes you just can't walk. For a meteorologist, here's the cruelest part. You can't predict it. No patterns, no model, no warning. It can go quiet for months or roar out of nowhere. Janice would later talk about the dread of waking up and not knowing what her body would do today. So, at 35, terrified with a brand new diagnosis, she was told to put on a brave face and keep her mouth shut. Someone literally looked at her, a woman whose body wanted to betray her every single day, and said, "Don't make people uncomfortable. Don't look sick. Keep your secret and protect the audience that has no idea any of this is going on." She stayed quiet for a while, not because she was scared, but because being new makes you feel exposed. You know how quickly a door can slam if people see you as difficult or too much. She'd spent years getting here, grinding, just to have someone above her call her diagnosis a liability, so she kept it to herself. She carried it through everything. That meant showing up on air for hurricane coverage, morning broadcasts, segments that millions watched, even as she was sitting in infusion chairs every 6 months, getting treatment for something she knew wouldn't wait its turn. She'd get her treatment, then walk onto set and tell people about the weather. The camera didn't catch any of it. The long mornings fighting with her own body, the private negotiations just to get dressed, the effort of looking steady when she felt anything but. All anyone saw was the broadcaster, warm, confident, the one who made viewers believe that no matter what the next storm brought, she'd tell it straight. She always told the truth, even when the truth was still hard to say about herself. Decades after her diagnosis, she went public. She wrote that she'd been told to keep her illness quiet because, apparently, nobody wanted to watch a sick person on TV. She's glad she broke that rule. She was still standing there, on camera, letting others with the same disease know they weren't invisible or alone. She showed them that being seen isn't a burden, it's brave. But that part didn't happen right away. In spring 2020, everything changed. The world was falling apart. COVID-19 didn't show up as just some story on a map. It landed hard, fast, and especially cruel for the people already at the edge. Sean Newman's parents, Ed and Mickey, lived in separate care homes in New York. Mickey was a veteran and spent his life working as a city firefighter, a legacy her son continued. Janice used to say they were real people, not just numbers or trends. Late March 2020, COVID took Mickey Newman. 2 weeks later, Ed died too. They died alone. Care homes shut their doors, families weren't allowed in. No last words, no hands to hold. The simple, necessary ritual of goodbye, gone, for them and for everyone left behind. The loss was huge. Grief, for Janice Dean, was just where it began. On March 25, 2020, New York's Governor Andrew Cuomo signed an order forcing nursing homes to take back patients from hospitals, even patients with COVID. For 46 days, those facilities brought the virus straight to the people least able to fight it. The deaths that followed? Overwhelming. Janice wasn't a political commentator. She used to say the only red and blue she followed were the colors on a weather map. But she started to speak, not as anyone's advocate, but as a daughter-in-law who'd just lost 2 people she loved and who believed it never had to happen. She said what happened to her family. She described transfers to a floor full of COVID patients. She explained how her mother-in-law caught it in her care home and died, her death not even counted in the final state numbers because of a reporting technicality. She kept saying it, these aren't just statistics. These are people. Pushback came fast and nasty. People dismissed her as the weather girl, like she couldn't possibly understand, like her grief was just for show. She did everything right, filed to testify before lawmakers, got approval, wrote letters, and then, days before the hearing, her name disappeared from the witness list. They said she made people uncomfortable. Once again, she was told to stay quiet. Before, it was about her illness. Now, it was about loss. The message was the same: stay in your box, don't speak up, but she didn't listen. Instead, she went on air. She called for real investigations, for honest answers. She spoke up while the man at the center of the storm was being praised as a hero, getting awards, celebrated in books and on TV. The national storyline was already written, and very few seemed interested in rewriting it. She watched all that with the weight of 2 funerals that shouldn't have happened. Cuomo's team avoided her real points. They focused on who she was, not what she said. The weather girl, unqualified. The goal wasn't to answer her, it was to make sure nobody else would listen. Maybe if they turned her into a character, or a partisan, her story would hurt less, or people would just stop hearing it altogether. She just kept going. In February 2021, a top aide to Governor Cuomo admitted, on a taped call, that the administration hid data from federal investigators because they were afraid the real numbers would hurt them politically. The truth came out. Over 15,000 people had died in New York nursing homes. That total had been held back while Cuomo was out accepting awards for his leadership. Janice Dean had been saying this for almost a year, but vindication didn't give her any peace. It rarely does, especially when being right means you've lost people you love. She said something simpler. She said what mattered to her. It was never about politics. It was about the lives that were lost. By August, the pressure of multiple investigations finally toppled Andrew Cuomo. The man who'd won an Emmy for managing a crisis left office in disgrace. And somewhere far from the cameras, after the interviews and the advocacy, Janice's own body still tallied up its private battles. Multiple sclerosis doesn't care about grief. It doesn't go silent just because you're fighting for the truth. The storm outside had come and gone, but the storm inside never really let up. There's a kind of exhaustion that doesn't come from overdoing it. It comes from constant vigilance. Waking up every morning and checking yourself before you even get out of bed. Can I feel my legs today? Is this regular tired or the other kind? Is today a day I can give everything, or will it take everything I have just to look like myself? That tiredness doesn't show up on TV. It's there in the hours no one sees, in the quiet space between the person everyone thinks they know and the person who drives home, finally lets the mask slip and gives in to the weight of it all. Janice Dean had been living with that kind of exhaustion for 20 years. She kept it in check with a strict routine, hospital infusions every 6 months, to slow the disease that kept attacking her nervous system. Not a cure, just a truce. A deal for a little more time, a bit more strength, and the chance to keep doing what she loved. For years, that deal held up. But the body doesn't forget. The heartbreak of 2020, the relentless public fights, and the drag of a chronic illness playing out during 2 decades of high-pressure live TV, it all added up, and medicine could only help so much. In November 2025, Janice stepped away from Fox News. She told people herself she needed to hit pause, to rest, to heal. Her bosses had been supportive. She said she'd be back. Like always, her message was straight up, no drama, just the truth. Before she started her break, she and Sean went to Rome. The Catholic Church was celebrating a Jubilee year, a rare event that brings millions to the city to look for renewal and grace. It made sense to Janice, a woman of deep faith who'd spent years carrying heartache no words could soften, to make a pilgrimage. She called Rome a good place to begin healing, at least spiritually. She came home, and healing, at least with MS, is never a straight line. By February 2026, Janice spoke up again. In another public update, she told the truth. Daily life was getting harder. Every day, the disease she'd managed and refused to let define her was pushing back harder than ever. She was 55. Half her life had been this fight. Those words hit differently than anything she'd shared before. Not because she was dramatic, that's not her style, but because they were quiet, direct, and true. And maybe, for the first time, people finally realized what the years at that green screen, hurricanes, disasters, tragedies, had really cost her. 20 years earlier, someone told her no. One wanted to see a sick person on TV. She spent 2 decades proving them wrong. For 20 years, she showed up anyway, through flare-ups and remissions, in infusion chairs, fighting a fight millions go through in silence. She made it visible, proof that yes, you're allowed to be this tired. In February 2026, she told the truth again. not to get attention or sympathy, but because someone out there, wide awake and keeping their own morning mental checklist, needed to know they weren't failing, that fighting and feeling worn out could both be true, that some days, just making it through is enough. Let me tell you what Janice Dean is really made of. Underneath the nickname, past the green screen, beyond the reputation she built in 2 decades of morning television, she got hit with 2 big blows at once, a diagnosis that threatened her ability to walk and advice to hide it. After the shock wore off, she chose not to disappear. She lost her in-laws in a tragedy that never should have happened, got taken off a witness list for being too inconvenient, was dismissed as just the weather girl by people who'd never sat through a 3-hour infusion, and still raised her voice. Loud, steady, until the record was corrected, the numbers came out, and the man draped in awards walked out in disgrace. She went to Rome not for the photo op, but because her faith needed her to stand somewhere ancient and holy, and let her grief be borne witness to by something bigger than herself. She's 55 now, fighting a disease that won't let up, and somehow still has the guts to say, "I'm still here, this is real, and you have a right to know it." There's an easier story to tell here. The Canadian girl who broke into American TV, the meteorologist with a famous nickname, the woman who fought a governor and helped expose one of the worst cover-ups in recent memory. All true, every bit of it. But it's not all of it. Janice Dean never settled for half a story. The real story is 6-month hospital infusions. It's tense, private mornings wondering if her feet will work. It's 2 funerals in 2020 her husband should never have had to attend. It's being erased from a hearing. It's every side comment about her qualifications. It's standing at a green screen, smiling, while her body fights a private war. It's the trip to Rome when medicine wasn't enough. It's the moment in 2026 when she publicly admitted her fight was getting harder, and meant it. This is who she is. She tells people what's coming. She tells the truth about the storm, even when it's her own. What Janice Dean means to people, the millions dealing with illness in silence, the families who lost someone and were told not to ask questions, every woman ever told to shrink herself for someone else's comfort, isn't false hope or some shallow idea of triumph. It's something tougher. The refusal to disappear. She has a husband who rushes into burning buildings, 2 sons who watch their mom face down things that would have crushed most people, and keep showing up. She's got faith that took her across the ocean in the hardest time of her life. She's got a disease with no cure, and she's got a voice that just won't quit. Every morning, whether she ends up in front of a green screen, in a hospital chair, or somewhere in between, Janice Dean is making the same case she's always made since the day a doctor gave her that diagnosis and someone else told her to keep quiet. She's still speaking. And the world is still listening. The argument is simple. I am here. This is real. And you are allowed to know about it. Janice Dean did not become unforgettable because she was the best meteorologist on television, though by every account, she genuinely is exceptional at what she does. She became unforgettable because she understood, earlier and more deeply than most, that the most important forecasts are never really about the weather. They are about what is coming, what it will cost, and whether the people in its path deserve to be warned. At 55, battered by loss and illness and battles most people never see, she is still at the green screen, still at the microphone, still telling the truth about what is on the way, still standing. And for everyone who has ever been told that their storm was too inconvenient to mention, that is not a small thing. That is everything. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. And if you or someone you love is living with MS or any chronic illness, please know you are not alone in the hard days. Visibility is not a burden. It is an act of courage. Just ask Janice Dean. Subscribe for more stories like this, one told the way they deserve to be told. We'll see you next time.